Discover the shocking letter that transformed a CEO's life after a little girl's touching final wish. Jacob Harris stood in the echoing corridor of the worn church, his tailored suit stark against the faded wood paneling. He was used to grandeur, the boardrooms adorned with sleek designs, the demanding applause of investors. But here, in this dim space, he felt a nagging pressure in his chest. He glanced around, searching for a distraction, when 10-year-old Emma approached him, her eyes sparkling like the sun. Her laughter danced through his mind, a sound so foreign amidst the numbing drone of corporate success. As she shared her dream of saving her family's home, a spark ignited within him. But as he made a promise to help her, a sudden rush of fear clawed at his insides. What had he just committed to? The doubts crept in like shadows. Could he truly divert company resources to save a home when profits were on the line? Yet the image of her innocent face cut through his usual defenses. Days turned into weeks, and his comfortable, controlled world began to unravel. The relentless pressure of upcoming mergers gnawed at him, the looming threat of failure with each decision. The executives in his company fed on ambition like vultures, whispering modern capitalism into his ear, profit over people, projections over promises. But Emma had been different. Her determination, an injection of pure hope, haunted him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As he sat in his high-backed chair, surveying the crisp graphs that charted market trends on his tablet, a letter arrived. A simple envelope that contained a host of heart-wrenching implications. Written in Emma's delicate handwriting, it detailed her family's sacrifices, struggles overshadowed by the looming threat of losing their ancestral home. Each word clutched his heart like a vice. It was a reminder of the person he had once wanted to be, of the things he had neglected in his relentless pursuit of success. What had he become? A leader feared yet alone? Admired yet disconnected? The tension mounted and his muscles tensed. Would his choice to uphold Emma's dreams jeopardize his company's trust? Were his personal ambitions now at odds with the values he once held dear? The weight of expectation bore down on him like a boulder, caught between loyalty to his job and a girl's heartfelt plea. Time slipped away, each tick of the clock intensifying his anguish. Could he really sit back and let corporate greed strip away the last vestiges of integrity? The stakes were alarmingly high. Risking everything could mean losing the connection he still had with his family. Not just Emma, but his wife, waiting for him at home, yearning for something more than financial success. Jacob found himself hovering at a precipice, heart racing, mind in chaos. In that moment, he was not just a CEO. He was a man, exposed, vulnerable, confronted by the specter of his own choices. The clock kept ticking, but the call to action loomed larger. Would he act to reclaim a piece of his lost self, or let the tide of ambition wash everything away? The answer lay ahead, hidden in the shadows of his wavering resolve. The first rays of dawn crept through the blinds, casting a muted light across Jacob's bedroom. He lay awake, consciousness flickering between dreams of corporate victories and the haunting image of Emma, her eyes filled with hopeful innocence. The struggle within him swelled, a tide of conflicting desires. He had a decision to make: allow the specter of his ambitions to drown him, or rise to embrace the fragile humanity he had nearly forgotten. As he prepared for another day in the boardroom, the weight of the letter lay heavy in his pocket, a constant reminder that his corporate world was not the only one under threat. He dressed meticulously, but each fold of his shirt felt constrictive, as if it were a shroud binding him to a past he no longer wanted. The office was bustling when he arrived, the clatter of keyboards and hushed negotiations a stark contrast to the turmoil stirring within him. Yet he had a clear purpose today. He met with his executive team, the boardroom shimmering with polished surfaces and strategic products plastered across screens, an arena where decisions were forged like bars of iron. Jacob, one of the executives began, the sneer beneath his carefully polished exterior evident, "The merger with Archer Industries will demand our full focus. We need to ensure our profits stay intact." A collective murmur met his ears, a survival instinct in a world driven by profit margins. He took a deep breath, searching for the right words amidst the turmoil surrounding Emma's reality. "Let's discuss alternative philanthropy initiatives," he began, surprising even himself. The delegation stared at him as if he had uttered a foreign language. "There's a small community initiative worth exploring. We could invest in local housing projects, perhaps provide a buffer for families facing eviction." Skepticism filled the room, their disbelief almost tangible. "Jacob, that's a distraction. We need full attention on profits, not some feel-good project." "But wouldn't that enhance our brand? Create a loyal customer base that aligns with genuine social values?" The expressions of hardened executives hardened further, each resistant to the shift in conversation. Doubt permeated the air. But inside Jacob something had ignited, a flame he hadn't felt in years. It was a moment of discovery. Not every battle was won in boardrooms, and not every success would be defined by accelerating profits. The meeting ended uneasily, and Jacob stepped into the late afternoon sunshine, a mixture of exhilaration and dread grasping at his heart. He had a plan, albeit a fragile one, and the thought of Emma's unwavering spirit fueled his resolve. Here was a chance for personal growth, a hidden capability he was beginning to recognize, leveraging corporate power for something other than mere profit, a transition from reflection to action. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, he returned home, the company's battles still echoing in his mind. He anticipated his wife's questions. Would she comprehend the shift in his values, or would she only see his ongoing struggle to find balance? That night, over dinner, Jacob broached the topic of corporate responsibility, their conversation igniting a flicker of doubt, but also a sense of purpose. "I want to redirect our resources," he explained, "to help people like Emma." Her expression was a kaleidoscope of surprise and concern, reflecting her sense of caution. "It could jeopardize your position, Jacob," she warned, the weight of experience drafted into her voice. Was he prepared to risk everything for a child he barely knew? The next morning, Jacob reviewed the merger paperwork with a fiery determination. A decision loomed, sharp and undeniable. As opportunities for diversion emerged, he would need to confront the antagonists, not just in the boardroom, but within himself. He closed his eyes for a moment, hand poised over the documents. What would he do? The real confrontation was ahead, a test of integrity against ambition. Standing at the precipice, he realized that more than just his career was at stake. Driven by a promise and an uncertain path, the moment of truth approached fast. What would happen when he finally chose to face those who thrived on the status quo? Jacob awoke the next day, the letter feeling like a brand upon his conscience. Each time he reached for his suit jacket, his hand brushed against the paper, igniting a montage of turmoil. The weight of expectations constricted around him like a coffin vying for his freedom. He had survived boardrooms fueled by profit, yet the thought of embracing a path that championed humanity sent cold shivers down his spine. As he poured coffee in the kitchen, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass. An outsider stared back, someone whose ambition had blinded him to the suffering surrounding him. Today, he wouldn't allow himself to slip back into that role. He took a long sip of coffee, willing the warmth to ignite his determination, pushing him toward clarity amid the chaos. Arriving at the office, he became aware of the shift beneath his skin. The usually energizing hum of the place now felt oppressive, each click of a keyboard sounding like nails in a coffin to his previous existence. With his mind made up, Jacob strode into the boardroom, ready to confront not only his colleagues, but also his own deeply entrenched beliefs. "Today," he began, his voice steady as he scanned the table of skeptical faces, "let's talk about the merger." He paused, letting his words resonate. "But let's also consider how we can leverage this opportunity to make a real impact." Eyes narrowed, faces grew tense. He continued, "I'm proposing a partnership with local organizations that focus on safeguarding families from eviction. Think of it as a new strategy that could redefine our brand." The murmurs began, a murmur that ignited into derision. "Jacob, you can't be serious," an executive leaned forward, incredulity clouding his gaze. "Charity isn't on the agenda. We need to make our numbers. This isn't a nonprofit." "But it can be both," Jacob shot back, his heartbeat pounding in rhythm with every word. This was the confrontation he needed, not just of circumstances, but of the fears buried deep within him. Investing in the community can improve employee morale, attract a customer base, and ultimately increase profits in a way that aligns us with ethical standards. Aren't we tired of being viewed as the villains? Silence spun through the room like an unseen force. He could practically feel the thoughts churning in their minds. That tension morphed into speculation. They were still reluctant, but couldn't dismiss the potential advantage. Jacob moved forward, feeling the flame of resolve fueling him. This wasn't just about the merger or the company. It was about reclaiming his identity as a leader. He had uncovered something rare, a sense of direction fueled by purpose rather than mere ambition. He shifted the focus to the future, building bridges rather than walls. Yet as he stepped out of the boardroom, a wave of doubt washed over him. Had he overstepped? Would they retreat into shadows of skepticism, overriding the spark he had ignited? His chest tightened at the thought of losing his job, a job that had defined him for so long. Returning home that evening, Jacob faced his wife. The apprehension she carried mirrored his own fears. "How did it go?" she asked, a fusion of concern and curiosity glittering in her eyes. "I challenged them," he confessed, the weight of his words heavy but liberating. "I put forth a vision we could support. It won't be easy." "But what if they shut you out?" Her concern dimmed the excitement in his heart. "What if this jeopardizes everything?" "Then I will fight for something that matters," he declared, grounding his voice with steadfastness he hadn't known he possessed before. The conversation drew a line in the sand. At what point did ambition become unethical? Could he dare to walk away from comfort to chase something far greater? As these thoughts swirled, Jacob felt himself at a crossroads, ready for conflict, not just with his colleagues, but against his fears. The determination within him was still fragile. He had ignited a fire, but he couldn't allow it to extinguish. Empowered by his vulnerability, he vowed today was merely the beginning. The confrontation would only escalate, and he would have to face the fallout. Tomorrow, he would venture deeper into the battle. The real test awaited. What could he sacrifice for his newfound convictions before the flames consumed everything he had built? Jacob stared blankly at the whiteboard in his office, the remnants of his earlier confrontation lingering like the last echo of a storm. He had offered a vision, a challenge that shook the foundation of his corporate life, yet uncertainty clung to him like a second skin. Each stroke he made with the dry erase marker felt heavy with the weight of repercussions. Was he truly prepared for the backlash that awaited him? The following day loomed before him, an unknown battleground where allies could become adversaries. He needed to craft his strategy, a plan to elevate his vision beyond the core skepticism that had met his initial proposal. He passed by the conference room, noticing colleagues laughing, pointing at spreadsheets and profits, their faces illuminated with a fervor that felt foreign to him now. A pang of nostalgia tore at him. He used to thrive in that environment, reveling in the numbers that define success. But his priorities had shifted, hadn't they? Determined, Jacob retreated to his office. He closed the door, locking out the noise. A notepad lay open in front of him, a blank canvas where he began to sketch possibilities, connections that could change everything. He reflected on potential partnerships, community leaders, and their narratives. Guidelines of profit and loss swirled around in his mind like a jumble of mismatched puzzle pieces. Could this vision be coherent and profitable? As he scribbled, he recalled the little girl from the charity event, the one whose face had tightened with worry, clearly burdened by the weight of eviction notices scattered across her family's fragile existence. Her story echoed through his thoughts. What kind of legacy did he want to build? He paused, his grip on the pen tightening as he felt the encroachment of doubt again. Would this new direction be dismissed as merely sentimental wishful thinking? The phone rang, snapping him back into the present. It was his executive assistant, Claire, her voice crisp even through the receiver. "Jacob, the board wants a follow-up meeting about your proposal. This time it's you and a couple of other executives. They're divided." Her tone mingled excitement with caution. Divided? His heart raced. This could either be a crucible for his idealism or a funeral for his aspirations. "Some see potential, others are adamant it contradicts everything we stand for," she said carefully. "Then I guess I need to bring my best defenses," Jacob replied, feeling the rush of adrenaline course through him. He realized this was no longer purely about the proposal. It was about defining his moral ground. Preparation consumed him over the next hours. He researched case studies on companies successfully combining profit with purpose, hoping the hard numbers could silence hesitant executives. He crafted compelling narratives emphasizing the human side, painting pictures of families uplifted rather than dragged down. However, as evening fell and darkness crept in, his resolve wavered. Fear nibbled at him. What if the competition branded him as reckless? What if they decided his ideals were obstacles rather than assets? Pressing palms against his temples, Jacob fought against the rising tide of self-doubt threatening to engulf him. He had fought too hard to retreat now. The next day arrived with an air of anticipation thick enough to slice. The meeting loomed like the edge of a diving board, and Jacob could feel his stomach twist at the prospect of exposing his vision yet again. Uncertainty gnawed at his inside as he stepped into the boardroom. As he turned to face his colleagues, he took a deep breath, remembering the little girl's worried eyes. "Today, it's time to take a stand for both our company and our community," he stated, igniting the flame of intent within him once more. He was ready to face the music, but as the first question arose, challenging his integrity, the unfamiliar sensation surged through him. In that moment of confrontation, Jacob realized the true scale of what he was willing to fight for. It was not just about numbers or compelling visions painted on a whiteboard. It was about the voices he had decided to honor and the weight of expectation he was prepared to challenge. With pulse elevated, he leaned into the question. This was the real test of character. Would he relent under pressure or declare his newfound purpose? The moment of revelation was upon him, rippling through the room like an electric charge. But as he prepared to respond, shadows shifted behind him. Someone had entered the room with intentions unknown. Jacob felt a chill sweep through the room as he turned slowly to face the newcomer. A woman stood in the doorway, confident yet somehow subdued, an expression of mixed determination and concern etched across her face. It was Clara, a senior executive known for her sharp insights and fierce loyalty to traditional values within the company. She had guided countless transformation efforts, but her presence here, at this moment, felt ominous. "Clara," Jacob said, his voice tinged with surprise, "what brings you here?" "I heard you were leading this session," she replied, her tone even. "I think it's important I be a part of this discussion." The boardroom fell silent, a palpable tension settling between them. Jacob sensed the eyes of his colleagues shifting, weighing the battle lines being drawn. Clara was an ally, but one who had often pushed back against ideas which deviated from standard practice. Did she intend to support him, or was she here to halt the momentum he was building? "Perhaps you can help us understand why Jacob feels this initiative deserves our attention," the board chairman suggested, casting a prophetic glance at Clara. With that, she stepped into the room, sliding into the position adjacent to Jacob. The sharp click of her heels echoed, and for a fleeting moment he felt an undercurrent of shame for having perceived her as an obstacle. It became clear she wanted to challenge, not him, but the status quo. Jacob felt the walls inch closer, the heavy air charged with unspoken stakes. His vision, once a beacon of hope, now seemed a fragile thread among a more substantial weave of expectations. Everything he prepared, the case studies, the emotional narratives, awaited judgment. "Jacob," Clara began, maintaining steady eye contact, "what sets this proposal apart? Why should we believe it's not just idealism wrapped in a corporate package?" Jacob felt the weight of her question. It was the same doubt that had plagued him, but he also recognized it as an opportunity. "Because it's about redefining success," he replied, voice steady as he squared his shoulders. "It's about innovation rooted in empathy, translating growth not solely as profit margins, but as human impact. This isn't just a financial shift, it's a cultural evolution." Silence engulfed the room. Jacob could feel Clara's scrutiny, both challenge and support layered in her gaze. This was a defining moment. Would he retreat or step further into the light he had envisioned for himself and others? "Let's consider the risks then," Clara pressed. "What if this culture clash fails? What if the very voices you aim to uplift rise against us instead?" The question hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. For a brief second, Jacob felt the weight of 1,000 recriminations. A flicker of panic threatened to surface. What if Clara's hesitance reflected the board's true position? Would his dreams lead to corporate ruin? He took a breath, recalling the little girl, the reason behind all this tension and dreaming. "If we do nothing, we condemn ourselves to stagnation," Jacob articulated, voice unwavering. "Change often feels uncomfortable, but inside that discomfort lies opportunity. If we risk addressing the realities faced by vulnerable populations, we simultaneously strengthen our foundation as a business. People want to engage with companies that are not just successful, but significant." As he finished, he noticed murmurs ripple through the board members, the gears turning, pondering the weight of his words. Jacob felt emboldened. He was not a lone crusader anymore, but a battering ram against indifference. But then came the pushback. "Nice rhetoric, Jacob," one of the board members interjected, arms crossed. "But how will you fund such a transformation? Where are the cold, hard numbers we need?" The boardroom buzzed with the clamor of debate, but amidst the noise, Jacob's mind sifted through options. He needed to confront this challenge head-on. Yet realization struck him. Perhaps it was time to reveal something beyond numbers, something deeper that would resonate. But as he started to formulate his thoughts, he spotted a familiar face outside the glass wall, Claire, his assistant, pointing upwards. Something was behind him. Jacob felt his heart race, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. What awaited him in the unfolding seconds was not just about his vision anymore. It was a moment that would determine whether he could walk the path he had chosen. What did she see? He thought, heart pounding. Would this revelation redirect everything he had built so far? Jacob's mind raced as he turned toward the glass wall, anxious to uncover the source of Claire's attention. With a deep breath, he braced himself for anything. The sight that met his eyes, however, was not something he anticipated. A large envelope had been pushed through the small gap in the boardroom door. The words, "Urgent, open immediately," scrawled across it in bold letters. The envelope sat just beyond the threshold, seemingly untouched by the ongoing debate inside. Jacob's instinct screamed for him to grab it, to know what lay inside. Ignoring the conversation swirling around him, he stepped toward the door, snatching the envelope before anyone could protest. "What's that?" Clara questioned, her eyebrow arched with skepticism. "It's nothing," Jacob replied, but his heart raced. He turned the envelope over in his hands, feeling the weight of anticipation mixed with dread. Was this a distraction from his goal, or a catalyst for something greater? Temptation whispered an urge to tear it open right there and then, but he staved off his instinct. Instead, he returned to the table, lifting the envelope to his peers, letting his outward calm mask the tumult within. This was about more than just him. It was about everyone present and the brave journey he had chosen to embark upon. He placed the envelope on the table, the long gaze of the board members steady on him. "Before we continue," he began, feeling the tension in the air, "I believe it's crucial we take a moment to reflect on whatever this is." "Jacob, we need numbers. We need to focus," the board member from earlier interjected, frustration cracking his voice. Jacob held up a hand, sensing the turning tides of leadership responsibilities in this moment. "What if this envelope holds something vital regarding the culture we've been discussing?" Jacob pressed, his voice steady. "We owe it to ourselves, to our ambitions, to explore all avenues, even those we may not expect." The room shifted, intrigued but still cautious. Clara's expression softened, her eyes reflecting a flicker of understanding. It was as if they were all momentarily pulled from their fixations on profit margins and data points, drawn into the profound uncertainty of what lay beyond the envelope's seal. Feeling emboldened, Jacob tore it open, pulling out a single sheet of paper. He glanced down at the handwriting, recognizing it immediately. The words dripped with honesty and simplicity. "Dear Jacob," he read aloud, "I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to share how much your work means to me, especially the way you think of kids like me. Please don't forget the importance of kindness in your decisions. I believe in you." At that moment, a wave of warmth washed over him. Clara's gaze softened, illuminating the humanity within their muted corporate walls. It became strikingly clear that the little girl's belief had reignited something deep within him he had nearly forgotten amidst the chaos of numbers and expectations. Jacob paused, his heart surging with a newfound determination. It wasn't just about applying theories or strategies. It was about real people, inclusive of dreams and hopes, every voice worthy of honor and consideration. "Profit figures are important," he continued, his conviction rising, "but our decisions must also resonate with values, values that are personal rather than abstract. If we focus on uplifting others, we elevate ourselves. This note reminds me of that." Before he could finish, one board member spoke up. "And how do we change the culture to be more than just numbers, Jacob? What's the next step?" Concern laced his voice, yet Jacob could see the gears shifting again, a growing eagerness to engage with this new perspective. Jacob considered the question, ready to frame next steps. "We create structures for these voices to be heard. We develop mentorship programs, support systems, and partnerships that align with the initiatives at the heart of my proposal. It's time to blend numbers with values. Together, let's redefine that equation." The room vibrated with the electric pulse of possibilities, conversations rising around him like a new current. The fight within him surged forward, igniting passion among the board members, perhaps, just perhaps, envisioning success in a form far richer than the traditional metrics they had always wielded. But as the discussion flowed, Jacob's thoughts drifted back to the letter, longing for clarity. What else was hidden within those simple lines? There was power in the message beyond encouragement, one that changed his perspective in an unexpected way. He realized he needed to uncover more. The little girl had unleashed something he hadn't anticipated. What was her story? What other insights could it offer him? The desire for answers pulsed through him, a new challenge emerging just as he felt he had gained ground. Would that push lead him to even greater heights, or lay bare further vulnerabilities? As Jacob focused on the discussion, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the brink of an even deeper revelation, one that could redefine not just his strategy, but the very essence of who he was becoming in this corporate labyrinth. The moment had arrived to ask himself, what happens when you let a voice, even from an unlikely source, guide you down a road previously untraveled? Jacob felt a pulse of energy radiating from the ongoing discussion. Passion for transformation seemed to coalesce around him, but his mind was still partially lost in the simple words of that letter. As the board members began articulating their ideas about mentorship and cultural shifts, Jacob's gaze drifted downward, fingers brushing against the folded paper that lay on the table before him. "Jacob, back with us?" Clara's voice pulled him from his thoughts. He smiled sheepishly, refocusing. "Yes, of course. I believe we have a remarkable opportunity to frame our initiatives in a way that reflects broader human values rather than mere numbers." A voice from the corner of the room probed deeper. "But how do we ensure this isn't just a transient inspiration? How do we make changes that are sustainable?" The question struck Jacob like a thunderbolt. He understood now that a corporate culture, once established, could be precarious. It took time, patience, and, above all, commitment. He recalled the note, the quiet plea for kindness, and it fueled his conviction. "I think we need to establish a commitment strategy," he proposed, his voice imbued with newfound confidence. "An ongoing engagement with our employees, allowing them to contribute to these cultural initiatives actively. Let's make kindness not just a word, but a core tenet underpinning our company ethos." As he spoke, Jacob felt the shift in the atmosphere. More heads nodded, eyes brightened. Ideas blossomed, thrilling notions of how many lives could be touched through authentic leadership transformed into reality. Yet, amidst the energy, a troubling thought lingered in the back of his mind. What had he truly learned from the little girl? Was this just an epiphany tugging at the heartstrings, or was there a deeper layer he needed to explore? Fueled by a newfound urgency, Jacob pieced together a plan. "I want each of us to share our stories next week about how we can elevate others through our roles," he suggested. "The experiences that shaped our own lives could help foster the empathy we need in our corporate culture." Once again, a spark ignited in the room. Clara nodded enthusiastically. "Great idea! Real stories give weight to our principles. It reminds us that behind every decision, there are real facts, struggles, hopes, and dreams." They dove into strategy, discussing details on how to integrate this storytelling element into their work culture. However, uncomfortable thoughts crept back in. What if they failed to resonate with the personal stories of those they aimed to elevate? What if they merely brushed the surface without instilling real change? The tension mounted within him, wrapped in the impermanence of mere intentions. Would this still be meaningful if driven by temporary zeal? He rubbed his temples, hesitation flickering like a candle's light against the backdrop of thunderous enthusiasm. Then a bold thought surged within him. Just as they had mentioned vocalizing personal stories, Jacob felt compelled to seek out the little girl behind the letter. What was her name? Where did she live? How could her narrative guide him to foster authentic transformation? "I have to speak with her," he declared, surprising not only his colleagues but himself as well. "Let's find that girl and understand her journey. If we can connect their stories to our broader goals, we may lead from a place of deeper understanding. We can ensure the shift is genuine, not just performative." Excitement mingled with his anxiety. What if her story challenged him? What if it stripped him further of complacent notions about success? As possibilities unfolded, he realized he was standing at a crossroads, not only for the company, but for his personal journey as well. As the meeting drew to a close, Jacob felt the weight of responsibility shift onto his shoulders. The story behind that letter was no longer just a catalyst, it had morphed into a mission. He needed to pursue the truth behind those few handwritten lines, to delve into her world, and perhaps, in uncovering her narrative, he would discover a part of himself he had not yet realized. With fervor ignited within, Jacob embarked on a new trajectory. He could feel the transformative power of authentic connections surging toward him, propelling him straight into uncharted waters where his vulnerabilities and strengths might collide. The journey ahead loomed ever clearer, but it was still veiled in ominous uncertainty. As he left that boardroom, an urgent question burned in his mind. How might a single letter change not only the trajectory of a corporation, but also the very essence of who he was becoming? Jacob stepped outside the boardroom, his heart pounding against the backdrop of buzzing conversations filtering through the corridor. The weight of his resolve settled into the pit of his stomach, a strange mix of trepidation and eagerness curling around his ambitions. He needed to track down the girl behind that letter, to unravel the threads of her story, and possibly, just possibly, his own. He took a deep breath, leaning against the cool glass of the office window, staring out at the lively cityscape. Each honking car, every bustling pedestrian, felt like a reminder of the world beyond the polished walls of their corporate echo chamber. What kind of life did she have? What challenges had she faced? And how had they shaped the little person who thoughtfully composed such a heartfelt note? As Jacob's mind raced, he quickly transitioned from contemplation to execution. He pulled out his phone and started researching local schools. The handwriting in the letter evoked a sense of innocence and earnestness, but more importantly, it held the promise of deeper truths about suffering and resilience. He needed to engage with more than just her story. He sought understanding. "Hey, Jacob," Clara called out, interrupting his thoughts as she approached. "You okay? You looked a bit lost there." "Just figuring things out," he replied distractedly, the weight of anticipation keeping him anchored. "What's our next step for the storytelling initiative?" "The team is on board. I think we can launch it in a week. But you seem preoccupied. What's going on?" Clara's eyes held concern, her intuition sharp as a tack. He hesitated. Was this the moment to lay bare his newfound quest? Vulnerability never came easily to him, but Clara had been supportive in the past. "I'm planning to find the girl who wrote the letter. I want to understand her story and make sure our initiative resonates on a deeper level." Clara's expression softens. "That's a powerful pursuit, Jacob. But what if you encounter something you're not ready for? You're already taking on a lot with this overhaul." "Maybe that's exactly what I need," he countered, pushing a hand through his hair, the nervous energy mutating into determination. "I can't drive change without addressing the root of it all. This is bigger than just corporate policies. It's about genuine connection." As they chatted, Jacob felt the limitations he placed on himself begin to dissolve. Clara's steadfast belief encouraged him to tap into hidden wells of confidence within. The tightness in his chest loosened, allowing clarity to articulate his next steps. Let's aim for next Friday to unveil our storytelling initiative, he decided, a quiet strength seeping into his voice. But I'll need some support. Can you help me gather resources on local schools and see if there's a way to find her? Absolutely, Clara responded, a smile breaking through. I'm intrigued. Let's make it happen. Armed with new alliances and a clear purpose, Jacob began to step beyond his familiar routine. The project soon shifted from a corporate obligation into a quest for authenticity, one colored with vulnerability, personal reflection, and a genuine desire for empathy. The days that followed dripped with curiosity as Jacob dove deeper into preparations. He interviewed teammates, took notes on their storytelling tales, and felt his own narrative slowly unfurling amid others' revelations. Each story recounted sparked ideas about how their company could bridge professional gaps and cultivate meaningful engagements. Yet in every moment of forward motion, remnants of doubt shadowed him. Could he really face the realities behind that handwritten note? How would venturing into her life alter his vision, or, worse, magnify his own limitations? In a period suffused with self-exploration, Jacob couldn't ignore the tightening grip of fear in the recesses of his mind. As the week wore down, he wrestled with conflicting thoughts, between the exhilaration of newfound purpose and the crippling uncertainty of the unknown. And still, there was something thrilling about the chase, an igniting spark that dared him to confront whatever awaited. Drawing a deep breath, he realized that his greatest challenge lay ahead, not merely finding the girl, but allowing her story to reshape the very core of who he was amidst the currents of leadership. The evening before their storytelling initiative launch, Jacob stayed awake late, a restless energy coursing through him. How long would he wait before his path would finally converge with hers? The thrill of the chase mixed with the dread of personal revelation, and a single thought rattled in his brain, a premonition of significance hanging over him. Would discovering her truth illuminate the darkness of his own uncertainties, or plunge him into deeper chaos? Jacob awoke to the soft light filtering through his window, a stark contrast to the raging storm of thoughts that had kept him up throughout the night. The storytelling initiative was set to launch today, yet the anxiety gnawed at him. Was he prepared to weave together the corporate narrative with the emotional threads he had yet to uncover? Alongside his excitement lurked the nagging uncertainty of facing the girl's reality. He slid out of bed, determined to channel his energy into something productive. In the kitchen, he skimmed through his notes, reminders of the countless stories that had inspired him in recent days. Each one echoed the hopes and fears he carried within himself. Would these stories resonate with the larger audience? What if they didn't? He dropped the papers, frustration bubbling as the doubt loomed larger. Dressing for the day, Jacob forced himself to focus on the tasks ahead. The initiative needed a cohesive message, something that would touch both heart and mind. As he navigated through breakfast, he replayed conversations with team members in his head. Clara had made a powerful point about vulnerability, how it could ignite shared connections. What he needed today was the courage to embrace his own vulnerability in front of an audience. Arriving at the office, Jacob was met with a flurry of activity. Colleagues buzzed about, reviewing final details and arranging the room for the presentation. His heart thumped against his chest, an anxious metronome underscoring the hectic atmosphere. He took in the scene, his colleagues eager, apprehensive, anticipation hanging thick in the air. This was more than just an initiative. It was a new story unfolding, one he was suddenly at the center of. "Jacob!" Clara's voice cut through the chattering crowd, and he turned to find her approaching with a folder in hand. "I've got some leads on the schools. There's one that matches the age and location from the letter." The excitement in her voice had a way of pushing his lingering doubts aside, even if just for a moment. "That's great news," he replied, his mind already racing ahead. He wouldn't just collect her story, he needed to present it effectively, wrapped in the emotional tone that Clara's enthusiasm embodied. The thought energized him, igniting the resolve within. In the boardroom, as Jacob stood before the team, he exhaled deeply, centering himself. The projector flickered to life, illuminating the stories he had gathered. Behind him, slides blended visuals with quotes that encapsulated the essence of vulnerability, connection, and resilience. He caught Clara's encouraging nod, and that simple gesture grounded him. As he spoke, weaving the stories together, he shared not only the narratives of his teammates, but began to bleed in his own apprehensions and ambitions. He recounted his decision to seek out the girl, the very essence of her message sending ripples through his own life. The weight of his revelation hung heavily in his throat, yet he pressed on, knowing that vulnerability begets vulnerability, an exchange that could reshape their corporate culture. But as applause surged through the audience at the end of the presentation, a twist of fear took hold. What if the power of his story lost its impact without the little girl's truth? He glanced at Clara, her eyes sparkling with support, and felt an unmistakable push to move beyond his limitations. That was the moment Jacob realized he could harness the fear, not as a barrier, but as fuel. The uncertainty propelled him forward, a catalyst for necessary evolution. As the meeting adjourned and the team began to disperse, Jacob's heart hammered with urgency. He needed to act, not just as a leader of their initiative, but as a seeker of stories. The girl was no longer just an abstract figure. She symbolized a pivotal point in his journey toward authenticity. He turned to Clara, who caught his eye, sensing his unspoken resolve. "Let's reach out to those schools now," he declared, the proactive energy fueling his words. Their path was clear, and with a newfound intensity, he prepared to step into the unknown, ready to confront whatever truths lay ahead. But just as the excitement built, he caught sight of a message that flickered on his phone. A notice from the principal of one of the local schools revealing an unsettling detail about the girl's circumstances. The revelation tightened the grip of doubt back around his heart. What awaited him was not merely another story, but the unearthing of a reality he wasn't sure he could handle. Could this journey truly lead him toward understanding, or were there shadows lurking beneath that he wasn't yet ready to confront? Jacob stood in the midst of the bustling office, a palpable mixture of excitement and anxiety threading through his veins. The presentation had ignited a solidarity among his colleagues, but now, with Clara at his side, he felt the urgency to act. He had to find Emma, the girl whose letter had changed the trajectory of his life. Her story was more than just an anecdote. It represented the collective humanity he had neglected in his pursuit of corporate dominance. As they walked briskly to the conference room, Jacob felt the unmistakable weight of responsibility settling upon his shoulders. He needed to find Emma and uncover the layers of her reality. The message from the principal loomed in his mind, a haunting premonition of the complexities he might face. "Clara, we need to reach out to the schools. It's more important than ever to make this about real people," Jacob said, urgency lacing his voice. "Absolutely," she replied, her determination mirroring his own. The duo swiftly contacted the schools, their resolve coiling around the mission. Jacob felt the healing power of purpose driving him. The moment in the boardroom had become more than a turning point for the company. It was now intimately tied to his own emergence as a leader. After an hour of fervent calls, they finally received a lead that sent Jacob's heart racing. Emma lived in a modest neighborhood, facing challenges even he, with all his corporate prowess, might not be able to appreciate fully. But he had come too far to turn back. Whatever awaited him could no longer scare him away. He needed to confront both his past and his future. The following afternoon, Jacob pulled up to the little house where Emma lived. It was small, showing signs of warmth and life, though its facade was marked with the struggles of economic hardship. The sense of vulnerability pressed against his chest. He had come to help, but in this moment he realized there was a chance for his own redemption. Walking up the creaking steps, he knocked softly on the door. A moment later, a woman opened it. A nervous but kind face peered out at him, reflecting the tenacity Jacob had seen in Emma's letter. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "Hi, I'm Jacob Harris. I'm looking for Emma," he replied, a mixture of hope and trepidation flooding his heart. "She's in her room," the woman said, her face softening a bit. "I'll get her." Moments later, Emma emerged. The warmth of her smile was contagious, her presence transforming the air around them. "Mr. Harris," she exclaimed, recognition lighting up her eyes. "Emma, it's so good to see you," Jacob said, kneeling to meet her at eye level. A veil of innocence wrapped around her, reminding him of the promise he'd made, a promise that had begun to reconfigure his very understanding of success. "You got my letter," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I did," he said, "and it inspired me to think differently about what I want my company to stand for. I came to learn more about how we can help."
Emma's face brightened as she shared her story. The obstacles her family faced, the dreams she had for their home, and the tenacity she embraced each day. Each word stirred within Jacob the haunting realization that success meant far more than profit margins. It was tied to the lives, struggles, and dreams of people just like Emma. "What if we could work together to create something meaningful?" he asked earnestly. "Combining your insight and my resources, we could change lives." Through her eyes, he glimpsed the power of hope and connection, a vibrant thread weaving their destinies together. The possibility of impact surged through him, a transcendent moment crystallizing into clarity. Days turned into weeks as Jacob worked hand in hand with Emma and her family. They developed programs at his company that directly addressed housing insecurity and support for families facing hardships. His role transitioned from merely a corporate leader to a community advocate, a person who drew fulfillment from the ebb and flow of real human connection instead of abstract quarterly earnings. Throughout this transformation, Jacob felt an authentic pride unfurl within him. He was no longer caught in the prisons of corporate expectations. Instead, he planted seeds of change, cultivating a company culture rooted in empathy alongside Emma's drive for making a difference. As the sun set on the final day of their initiative launch, the auditorium filled with stories of triumph and resilience from Emma's neighborhood. Emma stood at the forefront alongside Jacob, her eyes glowing with dreams and gratitude. Jacob marveled at how far they had come together, a journey of reclaiming purpose and evolving identity. That day, in front of a captivated audience, Jacob felt a sense of solid confidence and recognition among his peers. He had conquered both the resistance within himself and the skepticism of the corporate environment, successfully merging profit with purpose. A sense of fulfillment washed over him as he received applause, but it was Emma's radiant smile that brought pure satisfaction. Jacob had transformed, not merely as a CEO, but as a man committed to integrity, whose success was defined by compassion. What had once seemed an insurmountable chasm between ambition and humanity now felt like a bridge, one that connected him to the very heart of the community he served. Jacob's journey articulated a renewed message. True achievement goes beyond numbers. It's about transforming lives. Your turn to act arrives now. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't miss out on more exclusive emotional stories like Jacob's transformational journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more people discover incredible tales of personal growth. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Jacob's evolution. Lastly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of genuine life change.